So a jerkbait can be an awesome bait for 12 months of the year. You just kind of alter your retrieve with it. Like for instance, in February or January, it's real cold, and your general retrieve is going to be like a twitch pause. Like you just twitch, like maybe and let a long pause between your jerks. Well, when it gets hotter or you got schooling fish, that's when I love to throw jerkbaits, when you got schooling fish. Lake Fork this year had a shad spawn. It was May. I mean, it's not what you think is a jerkbait time, but the fish got up really shallow on a shad spawn, and I was still throwing a jerkbait, but I was throwing it much more aggressively. More of like, when it's a warmer retrieve, I more fish it without any pauses hardly. Just kind of hard jerks and constantly jerking. But it's different from your wintertime pattern where a lot of your bites will be while it's sitting still. So really you just kind of have to experiment with it. It's not like a tried and true in June you twitch it twice. It's not like that. But it's more of a vary your retrieve. In general, you get warmer water, it's a faster retrieve, versus in colder water, it's gonna be a slower with more pauses retrieve. But a jerkbait can definitely be a tool for year-round fishing. The profile of a jerkbait makes it a great bait year-round. It's a shad. I mean, that's what it's supposed to look like. It's an awesome bait for any type of fishing, and you always need to have it tied on. It's just your presentations change. But speaking of presentation, the setup you have to throw a jerkbait can make all the difference. What I like is a shorter rod, actually. I generally prefer longer rods for every other technique, but when fishing a jerkbait, you're actioning your jerkbait. So when you're twitching it, I'm generally twitching it straight down. So if you got a 7/6 rod, obviously it's gonna be tough to twitch. This is a 610 Invoker Pro arc rod, and it's got a pretty soft tip to make it easier to twitch. I mean, you got a pretty soft action, so when the fish gets the bait, you got treble hooks, so you don't wanna pull the treble hooks out of their mouth. It's got a soft tip and the short rod. The short rod is the key when jerkbait fishing. I mean, if you're a really, really tall guy, I mean, you might get away with a 7-foot medium type rod. But the 610 is the perfect jerkbait rod in my opinion. And you want a soft action. I mean, you got a pretty soft, it's basically like a crankbait rod action, and it just keeps you from pulling the bait out of the fish's mouth and makes the presentation a little bit easier with the jerkbait. The line I use is generally, I would say 9 out of 10 times I'm going with Yo-Zuri 10-pound top knot fluorocarbon. But there is also some exceptions to that. Lake Fork this year, I was throwing this dual hardcore jerkbait. It dives probably 5-6 foot deep on 10-pound test. But I was throwing this jerkbait, it was a shad spawn. I was throwing the jerkbait up into 1 foot to 2 foot of water. So to factor that in, I actually went up to 16-pound top knot fluorocarbon. And the jerkbait probably doesn't have quite as much action with that heavier line, but it kept my bait from getting down and plowing in the bottom nearly as bad. And I was catching some pretty big fish, and it was more line to handle them with. But 10 to 12 pound test is probably your staple lines on jerkbait fishing unless you get weird situations.